couple of weeks back, I hosted my good friend Liv at my flat for a few hours where we put together a mini headshot style photo shoot. Liv is an actress, and so the main aim of the shoot was to get some photos that she could use in her portfolio of headshots, whilst also remaining a little bit more creative and getting a slightly more stylized editorial look on a few images. From my perspective, I wanted to test out a new film stock and also a new camera I picked up, and so as long as I got a few images that Liv and I were both happy with, I would have deemed the shoot a success. Turns out we actually created quite a few images that we both really liked. Let's get into it. For this entire shoot, I wanted to use just one strobe light and also mix in some of the natural light that was coming in through the large windows in my flat. The light that I used was my Godox MS300 flash, and I softened this with both a softbox and grid setup, as well as a shoot-through umbrella. And I also took a couple of images with this sort of reflector softbox umbrella hybrid also. Camera-wise for this shoot, I actually shot 4 different rolls of film, 2 35mm and 2 medium format 120 rolls of film. All 4 rolls through 4 different cameras, so it was certainly a little bit experimental and also probably a little bit overkill. The 35mm film that I shot was a roll of Kodak Gold 200 through my EOS 3 with the 50mm f1.4 Canon lens. This was what I was sort of considering to be my main workhorse setup for the shoot, and thus this was what I was really aiming to get portfolio images from for Liv. And then I also shot half a roll of 35mm Ilford HP5 through the Ricoh Mirai 105, which is an awesome camera that I recently posted a full video on. So if you want to see that, I will leave a link to that in the description, of course, and a card up the top there. I didn't really use it for any portraits or with the built-in flash in that original review, and so I wanted to see what sort of results I could get out of that setup. And spoiler alert, it was a nightmare. Then from a medium format perspective, my main camera was the Hasselblad 500C with the 80mm f2.8 lens, and I shot a roll of Ilford Delta 100 through that. Again, that was what I was hoping mostly to get some good results from for Liv. And then my other setup was actually testing out 2 different bits of kit, both for upcoming videos and also just for my photography in general going forwards. I shot a few exposures through my new Pentax 645, which has a pretty wide 45mm f2.8 lens, and the film that I shot through this was Harman Phoenix 200, a film stock that I have never shot before and I'm going to be releasing a full review of in the next few weeks. Liv and I went through 4 different looks on the day, and I tried to capture each of these looks on each of these different camera and film stock setups. So let's dive straight in to the first one.
Suddenly, the world I used to know, I see it differently. You woke me from a dream, now here's reality. Baby, baby, you are really hurting me.
We started off actually using the natural light which was coming from the large windows in my living room, and we had Liv sat on the sofa and moving around on the carpet, leaning on the sofa in a few different positions. The light was coming from her right hand side, and I did have to supplement the natural light with some flash when the sun went behind the clouds for a few of these images. These were largely just warm-up shots for the both of us, getting into the swing of things whilst she was in a more casual and relaxed outfit. The Harman 200 images came out just okay, I would say, but the black and white portraits shot through the Hasselblad I think actually came out pretty awesome. There's a good level of contrast to the images. I love how the light is shaped around her face and it has a really soft quality to it, and the catchlight in her eye from the big softbox really stands out as well. Overall, a pretty solid start, and at least enough to get us both warmed up and relaxed.
The game that you've been playing felt so real to me. I once believed that you could be my destiny. Really hurting me. Who is she? How can you reject me so damn easily? Who are you and what are we? Baby, baby, you are really hurting me.
From there we moved to a more studio style setup using a plain white wall in my living room again, and contrasting this with a darker red shirt which Liv had picked out. And I think that this look actually ended up being my favourite from the entire shoot.
If you don't need me, just let me know and I'll go. I know you're playing your part.
The Gold 200 images shot through the EOS 3 here I think have an almost painterly quality to them. There's a beautifully shallow depth of field to these images. Her shoulders are just drifting out of focus whilst her eyes remain completely pin sharp. The light, which for this setup was again a softbox with a grid and was placed at 45 degrees left of and slightly above of Liv's face, and this creates that Rembrandt style lighting which is obviously so popular for portraits and looks so lovely.
I'm dying. I know you're playing your part, but baby,
a slightly wider shot, which shows Liv from her legs up, I think is probably my favourite from the entire shoot. Her pose fills the frame beautifully, and to me it just feels like a lovely headshot that has a somewhat editorial quality to it. I also really love this slightly closer portrait image. Again, it has such a lovely depth of field, some vignetting in the corners of the images, and just such a richness to its colours. It's a reminder why I love shooting film and love to shoot a slightly cheaper film stock like Gold 200 for stylistic portraits. I shot a couple images of the Phoenix 200 here through the Pentax 645. This focal length is definitely a little bit wide for me. It's equivalent of a 28mm lens on a 35mm full frame camera, and the film stock was also just a lot more contrasty than I realised that it was going to be. However, I do think that the combination made for some slightly more visually interesting images that perhaps break the traditional norm that is often followed with portrait and headshot work.
When I wake up early in the morning, and when I come home at night.
Using the Hasselblad 500C in this setup also garnered some of my favourite images. The plain white background works so well in this black and white setup, and it landed at almost a middle grey when using the flash. I didn't add any sort of reflector on the right hand side of Liv's face, and so that side really fell away into the shadows and provided a really moody and dramatic look. Something that I think really complemented the outfit and works well for a pretty serious and creative looking headshot. The image where Liv's body is pointed away from the light and her head is turned towards the camera is another one of my favourites. We just see a hint of light flashing on her cheek and also catching in her eye, and I think this side profile is super flattering, and her strands of hair almost bring a sense of movement to a very still image. I really liked this one, and overall really liked this setup. I did also just snap some images with the Ricoh Mirai 105 here, and yeah, I mean, these are okay. The camera was really struggling to focus, and it was honestly just a bit of a pain to try and shoot with. From here we moved back over to the large window area, and I wanted to use the sheer curtains as a sort of backlight diffusion to the images. I think throughout this setup I probably had the shutter speed just a little bit too quick, meaning that we didn't get enough ambient light, as I wanted the curtains to be quite bright behind Liv. But throughout all of these images, the background was just a little bit too dark for my liking.
Like lightning from a clear sky. I wasn't ready.
We did change over the lighting modifier for these images too, and we used the shoot-through umbrella throughout, which just gave a little bit less control to the light and sort of threw it around more evenly rather than being directed straight towards Liv's face. Hence, the level of lighting overall was just a little bit flatter. The red outfit that Liv picked out did contrast really nicely with the background, and this image taken with the Pentax 645 was maybe my favourite that I got from that roll throughout the day.
I guess I'm living in the dark age.
Again, I got just a couple of shots using the Mirai 105's flash to round out this look. Nothing special, but a couple of nice images in this setup. The final look that we went for was this blue flowy top, and I placed Liv on the edge of the sofa facing away from the window, allowing me to get just a little bit more depth into the corner of the room and hopefully using that light as a slight backlight.
I'm gonna tell you that I love you 100 times a day.
Key light wise, we changed out to this reflector umbrella that has the light facing away from Liv. It bounces off a very reflective surface and is fired back towards Liv through a diffused material. I sort of view it as a hybrid between the shoot-through umbrella and a softbox. It gives a nice quality of soft light, but throws it around just a little bit more than a softbox with a grid would. The Hasselblad 500C images here came out really nice. We were going for a slightly more relaxed and smiley vibe for some images in this setup, so that Liv had the option to put that into her portfolio if she wanted to. The light here wasn't quite a side-on, and so we do retain just a little bit more detail in the shadow side of her face, and not nearly as much of the image falls into pure black. This set of Kodak Gold photos through the Canon EOS 3 I also think came out really rather well. Again, we were going for a slightly more relaxed and traditional headshot style with these images. The lighting was slightly less contrasty and dramatic, and the focus of the compositions was more so about Liv's facial expressions and her features, something that is obviously pretty important for actors' headshots.
I'm gonna tell you that I want you. I wanna let you know.
I only had one image left in the roll of Harman 200 when it came to this point, and I think that it actually came out pretty cool with this look. The depth into the corner of the room I think really helps and exemplifies the wider angle of these images. And then of course I also made a few images with the Mirai 105. Once again they were largely out of focus, but I thought that I'd still leave them in.
So I really hope you love me too. Yeah, I really hope.
My overall thoughts on the shoot as a whole and on each setup are as follows. Gold 200 and my Canon EOS 3 with a 50mm f1.4 lens remains one of my favourite combinations for shooting portraits. You get some slight imperfections in your images and some lovely warm rich tones, particularly in the skin, and great levels of contrast, particularly when you're working with just one light. This was my first time really properly using the Hasselblad 500C for portrait work, and the results really did blow me away. The images are incredibly sharp, but again have lovely fall off and depth of field. The images have an amazing amount of detail, but retain a really lovely contrast level and really smooth tones across Liv's face without being overly sharp. I could happily shoot portraits on these two cameras alone for both colour and black and white film. The Pentax 645, I was actually pleasantly surprised with the results, and I do think that the choice of film stock and the lens probably isn't ideal for headshot style portraits. The wide angle 45mm lens, as lovely as it is much more suited to environmental style portraits, if anything, probably more so landscapes as well, and it just doesn't give the most flattering look for close-up headshots, particularly when used with the plain background as I did throughout most of this shoot. Phoenix Harman 200 also was just a little bit too contrasty for me for portrait work, but the images came out not half bad, and they certainly had a very distinctive look to them. And then finally, the Ricoh Mirai 105 was just an absolute disaster. On this shoot, it really struggled to focus, I think partly due to being close to or sometimes within its minimum focus distance, but also just to it struggling in the light levels. We did get some pretty cool and arguably artistic out of focus shots, and the flash did give a pretty cool look in some situations, but really these images didn't turn out that great, and I didn't have high hopes whilst using it on the shoot. Overall though, I'd say that the entire shoot was a success, and most importantly, Liv got some photos that she was very happy with, and I got some photos that I'm quite proud of. That is going to be all for this one though. I do hope that you enjoyed it. I'm going to leave you with some of my favourite images from the shoot, and will of course leave what camera and film stock it was shot with below the image. But if you like the video, please feel free to leave me a like, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm always welcome to constructive criticism and advice, and of course, please do consider subscribing if you want to see any more of my content going forwards. Stay safe everyone, stay happy, and I'll see you in the next one. To live without your love, it's like I've been waiting.